Welcome, welcome, welcome. Zoe Flowers here. I never go live. I really feel like this is like my second live in a number of years. So let's just get into it. I'm not going to waste your time. We are good. Maybe I'll just do lives from now on. Oh my gosh, I think it's so much easier. Welcome to whoever joined. Hey folks. Yeah, I never go live. I think I'm just going to go live from now on. I feel like it might be just easier. Okay. Because recording it beforehand and then putting all the bells and whistles on, like, don't we just want to get to the reading? So let's see. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And abide by our community guidelines. Hey, Rich Rising, Rich Rising. Yay. See, I like this. People can come in the chat. I think I'm just gonna do lives from now on, unless I'm doing a pick a card. All right. So, what is our women's history card of the day? So, yesterday we had Ida B. Wells, and it was all about justice. Spirit, what do you have for us today? And I am pulling from the R Tarot deck. All right, let's see who we have for today. All right, so today we have, interesting. We actually have two today, so I think I'm going to do two. They both fell, so I'm going to just read them. And so I just got this deck Monday on the first day of Women's History Month, and so I am learning along with you all. So we have Emelia Earhart here, and she is representing the world. And then we have the Page of Cups, Dorothea Dix. So we go and see. I mean, it's interesting because we've got this snake here. Whenever I see a snake that in the tarot, that always makes me feel about regeneration. We know the pages are about budding curiosity, learning something new, and then the cups are about emotions, right? They have to do with the water signs: Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio. So this is really interesting. So thinking about new emotions today, maybe today is, yesterday again was about justice and where we found justice and what our personal definitions of justice was. And now today, this is interesting. This Page of Cups is very much like, entering the world. What would it mean to enter the world, to be the explorer? We know Emelia Earhart was the explorer. What would it mean to go into the world? Way of looking at emotions. But I'm going to read because a lot of these, so for me, as a tarot reader, some of these choices, let me start with the good. So the good is, this is a good way to learn women's history. So there's that. However, and as a tarot reader, some of these choices are just a little strange. Like some of the characters, to me, don't necessarily fit with what the cards actually mean. So, however, there is obviously inherent value in learning about these folks. Okay, so let's see who Emelia Earhart, 21. Here we go. Okay. And it's long. So this book has the image here. I'm probably not going to read all of it. I was able to really paraphrase yesterday because I know about Ida B. Wells. I don't know as much about Emelia Earhart, though. So it says, so this is also interesting, declared dead in absentia. She was born in 1897. She was declared dead in 1939 because she went on a trip and she never was found. And I'm not sure if her plane or even pieces of the plane were ever. Oh, look at that glow. You got that glow. Okay, sorry. All right. Yesterday's reading was a little extra. Today's a little bit more subdued. And what's today? Today is Wednesday. Okay. So this is great. So today is ruled by Mercury, a day of communication. All right, so let's see. Upright, completion, conclusion, possibility, deserved rest. Amelia Earhart was an independent spirit from childhood, the ringleader of a group of girls who included her younger sister and their friends. Amelia's mother dressed her daughters in bloomers, which was uncommon for the time, so that the girls could easily romp and play outdoors. When Amelia was 10 years old, she saw an airplane for the first time at the Iowa State Fair. Her father pointed it out to her, then tried to get Amelia and her sister to take a ride. Amelia later wrote in Last Flight, I was much more interested in an absurd hat made of an inverted peach basket, which I had purchased for 15 cents. After graduating from high school, Amelia served as a nurse in World War One. It was after the war ended that she had another experience with aircraft, and this time her reaction was different. In 1918, she attended an airfair in Toronto where she saw a World War One ace put on a flying exhibition. As she and a friend stood in a clearing trying to get a better view of the plane, the pilot started to dive at the crowd, swooping close and causing the crowd to scatter. I remember the mingled fear and pleasure which surged over me. Common sense told me if something went wrong with the mechanism or if the pilot lost control, the airplane and I would be rolled up in a ball together. I did not understand it at the time, but I believe that little red airplanes said something to me as it swished by, Amelia wrote. So that's interesting. So she felt like the airplane talked to her. Interesting. Whatever that something was, it was temporarily muted that same year when Amelia fell ill with pneumonia, which required surgery and convalescence. Okay. She was determined to explore her newly discovered passion. She sought out the guidance of the right teacher, according to Susan Butler in East to Dawn. She went to another field where there was a female instructor, Netta Snook, because she felt that she would learn quickly and easily from a woman. Yes, Amelia, I hear you. Her parents helped pay for her aviation lessons, and she also took a room clerk at a telephone company. In 1921, female pilot to fly to an altitude 8, the beginning of her record-setting career. Amelia received several high honors for her record-breaking career in aviation. In 1937, her and her navigator, Frank Noonan, set off in Earhart's Lockheed Electra 10E to fly a route that roughly followed the equator around the planet. Their first stop would be Howell Island in the Pacific Ocean, where they planned to refuel. As Amelia neared the island, the weather became overcast. Fatefully, for unknown reason, her plane was unable to establish two-way radio communication with the U.S. Coast Guard. The radio operators could hear her, but she couldn't hear them as they tried to guide her to the island. We must be on you, but we cannot see you, Amelia said over the radio 19 hours into the flight. Gas is running low. She attempted to communicate her position one last time on July 3rd. Due to the thick clouds and the limits of radio navigation technology at the time, Amelia and Fred were unable to get their bearings and were lost. So I didn't know that there were two people. Within an hour of the last communication, the Navy Coast Guard began a search that lasted for more than 2 weeks following their disappearance. After the official search ended, George Putnam financed a rescue mission of his own, using the resources of the neighboring Pacific Islands, but to no avail. Most historians agree that Amelia, Fred, and her plane probably crashed into the ocean and sank. Sad. Some argue they may have survived for a time on another island. Many theories, legends, and stories have evolved over decades regarding her tragic disappearance. Although she did not successfully traverse the planet, yeah, this is making me feel like for today, that even if you don't finish your perceived mission, it's important to try. That's what I'm just feeling. But let's see what this says. Her determination, confidence, and clarity of vision enabled her to gain the knowledge she needed to take on challenges she set for herself. The world card represents challenge. It's interesting because in some decks, the world card does feel like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. Some cards feel like carrying the world on your shoulder. Some cards feel like taking the world by storm, for lack of a better word. The world card represents challenge. You may be presented with a problem that seems unresolvable, or maybe you feel call to do something that people, including yourself, think is impossible. This card instructs you to ignore the naysayers, and charge forward. The world's appearance in your reading indicates that the challenge you perceive aren't as insurmountable as you think. The world requests that you consider these important questions. What do you want to accomplish that seems beyond your reach? Are those limitations imposed by you or other people or both? How can you take on a challenge by not without being hindered by doubt? Exactly. And then here comes the Page of Cups, right? Remember, I started this conversation saying that the Page of Cups, you're hitting it right on what you feel confirmation for when I pull. Oh, I'd love to hear what you pulled yesterday, because this is making me feel like, okay, so something seems impossible, right? I know I've got a lot of personal things going on in my life. My mother, unfortunately, fell down the stairs. She'll be 80 on the 23rd, and she fell down the stairs here in her house. Thank God I was here. And she broke 2 toes. And now she is in a rehabilitation. She's been there for 2 weeks. And it's difficult. I'm the only child. Things seem insurmountable. She can be very challenging. So can I. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things that feel very challenging, very much like I have the world, on my shoulders. And there's things that I want to do too. There's things that I want to accomplish. So this is hitting very personally today. Thank you, Spirit. I feel very emotional, actually. And then the Page of Cups is here to say, take it light. These things aren't impossible. Regeneration is possible, right? Rebirth is possible. This is part of the rebirthing process, right? This isn't the Wheel of Fortune, but I'm feeling like very much like karmic, like what we're all going through is very karmic. We're all being tested. We're all being pushed. We're all being stretched, right? In this creation of a new world. We say we want a new world, but do we really, right? When we are presented with change and our world is shaken, who are we, right? Can we be like the page? And the page always feels very innocent, very naive to me. And so can we have the naivete of patience? Can we channel our emotions into something new, or do we fall back in old patterns? So that's very much what I'm feeling. I'm going to read a little bit about Dorothea Dix, because that's one of the reasons why we got this book, right? But I do work obviously intuitively, and I channel in addition to what the cards say. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. But it could have been, it could have been worse. So thank God it's not worse than it is. Dorothea Dix, 1802 to 1887. Wow. So in this deck, emotional wellness, nourishment, and offering love. Look at that. Dorothea Dix was born to alcoholic parents who created a troubled environment. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. Her father was a preacher and was often absent. And when he was present, he was abusive. Shit. Okay. Dorothea went to live with her wealthy grandmother in Boston, where she enjoyed more stability, although she was frequently ill with a severe cough and fatigue. What is this? So we have Amelia Earhart, who was ill. And, it's so, Amelia Earhart gives me very much Mia Farrow tease. Amelia Earhart, and it's interesting because I'm watching the, so for those of you that are new to me and my reading style, I definitely, listen, I go off on tangents. I do all kinds of things, but it's all a part of the healing, right? But I'm watching Farrow versus Allen, the story of Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. And Mia Farrow also was very sickly as a child. She had polio as a child. And so a lot of things happened to her as a result of that disease. And then we have Amelia Earhart, who was also very, very sickly. And then we have Dorothea Dix, who was also very, very sickly. Perhaps her own struggles, suggests medical historian Manon S. Perry in the American Journal, more compassionate helped her make a more compassionate advocate for people who had diagnosed as mentally unstable and insane. Oh, okay. So yeah, so look, just what we were saying. So she worked with people who were mentally unstable. She had limited schooling, but she established an elementary school. So she was also, wow, okay, in her grandmother's home in 1821 when she was only 19. Initially, the school served children from affluent families. Not long after this, though, she began teaching children from poor families as well. In 1824, she published a book of facts for school teachers titled Conversations on Common Things, that was written as an imagined conversation between a mother and a daughter. In 1831, she opened a secondary school. Her workload exacerbated her poor health, however. Wow. And in 1836, her doctor recommended she close her schools for good and travel to Europe to restore her vitality. Because for those of you that don't know, they were doing all types of things in Europe way before here. And so it wasn't uncommon for people to go on convalescence to Europe and those places. And I also wonder, I don't know, I wonder where she went though, just thinking about the climate. Hmm. Her grandmother's wealth had enabled her to associate with some of Boston's influential thinkers, such as writer and philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who helped arrange her trip. She traveled to England. Now that's interesting because the weather there is not fantastic, where she met reformers who inspired her with her beliefs in equal treatment for people from all walks of life. She stayed in the home of political and reformer William Rathbone, who introduced her to prison reformer Elizabeth Fry and Samuel Tuke, who had founded a retreat for people suffering from mental illness. She returned to the United States a year later with a vested interest in more effective humane approaches towards treating the mentally ill. Her grandmother died, leaving her an inheritance that enabled Dorothea to support herself upon her return to Boston. Dorothea took a teaching job at a prison in Boston and observed its horrors. Mentally ill people lumped together under the moniker of insane, regardless of symptoms that often weren't uniformly shared, were kept in close quarters with people who had been convicted of violent crimes. Living conditions within these prisons and asylums were filthy, dangerous, and unhygienic because of the neglectful environment. These vulnerable populations were often subject to abuse and exploitation, not unlike today. I added that. Dorothea visited as many of the facilities as she could, then presented her findings to the Massachusetts legislature. In 1843, she proclaimed, I proceed, gentlemen, briefly to call your attention to the present state of insane persons within this commonwealth in cages, stalls, pens, chained, naked, beaten with rods, and lashed into obedience. That sounds familiar. Her advocacy sparked a significant movement to reform prisons and asylums. Dorothea traveled the country accomplishing similar goals and inspiring health and social reform legislation in other states as well as Canada and Europe. She worked as a superintendent of women's nurses during the American Civil War, too. She was the first woman to hold this position. However, her strong personality often clashed with Army officials and even other nurses, and she was fired from that role in the end of 1863. So this little bit here reminds me a little bit of Ida B. Wells' story yesterday, because the thing with Ida B. Wells was she was she wasn't technically a suffragette, but she believed in the women. And I say she wasn't technically because that was pretty much like a white thing. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. So the thing about the suffragettes were that they were mainly concerned with the rights of white women's right to vote, and they were not necessarily concerned with the upliftment of Black people in particular. And so Ida B. Wells found herself in a very precarious position because she also, what she's known for is her work on anti-lynching, right? And so the anti-lynching, the Black folks were misogynistic and misogynoiristic towards her, meaning stay in your place, Black girl. We don't really want to hear about gender issues so much right now, when she was advocating for the right to vote. And then the white women were like, we just want to focus on all women and not so much your lynching. So Ida B. Wells kind of found herself getting it from both ends. And so Dorothy, and so one of the things though, where she got fired when she was a teacher, Ida, she started talking about and writing about the mistreatment of Black children and the poor conditions in Memphis schools. So she was fired too, because they were like, you ain't gonna work here and write about how poor our schools are at the same time. So she was fired as well, like Dorothea. This didn't stop her, though. Dorothea continued her reform and advocacy work for the rest of her days. After the war, she worked to evaluate the damage and resulting needs of prisons and asylums in the Americas. So, where I last left off, Miss Dorothea Dix, she was born to an alcoholic and abusive preacher father. She was very, very sickly. She traveled the world helping people to get better, and she worked heavily on prison reform, particularly around people with mental illness. So, it says here, so in 1881, Dorothea moved into a hospital in New Jersey that she had established herself. Her health was deteriorating, but she kept up her work by corresponding with reformers around the world until her death. Dorothea Dix used what means were available to her to draw attention to the cruel treatment of the mentally ill and create change. While she adhered to the idealized archetype of 19th century women by being a nurturer and a moral authority, she also subverted it by exposing herself and others to graphic suffering. The Page of Cups represents someone who has had an opportunity to undergo an emotional transformation, just like I said, because we had the snake here. So I already knew it was regeneration. If the person is you, then you need to take steps into places that are frightening. Be open and inquisitive about what's ahead of you. If you don't know yet what your opportunity is, listen to the people around you, taking note of their ideas and problems. Listen to your feelings as well. The Page of Cups is an affirmation that your emotional intuition is strong. What problems or obstacles do you face currently? What can you do right now to progress out of that situation? And how can you use your experience as an opportunity to assist others? So there you go. Both of these stories are about overcoming challenges, overcoming illnesses, and moving forward and not being afraid. So these are our women's history folks of the day, Miss Emelia Earhart, Miss Dorothea Dix. My computer did get a little wonky and turn off. It wasn't its fault. It was my fault. And so I think that there's a way that I can go into iMovie and splice these two together. So that is my women's history. The other thing I'm thinking about doing, I'm not sure who's on, if you want to drop into the chat and let me know. So I do a lot of readings. I have students and things like that, healing clients. And most of my readings and most of my spiritual work is around healing and growth. However, I am also an artist and I am a pop culture girl. So I'm wondering about doing some readings like on what's going on in the world, like with pop culture, with celebrities. Part of me felt like I shouldn't do that. There's so many other people doing that. I shouldn't venture into that world. But I'm interested. Like that, it seems like fun. So, what do you think? One person in the group. Like readings on politics. I think I'm going to do it, especially since I can just go live. I think I'm going to do it. I do a lot of pick a cards and things like that, but I think I'm going to do that. So, all right. So that's that on that. I did my women's history. I'm going to upload it. Thank you for watching in advance. Please like, share, and subscribe so I can get out of the algorithm jail and come into the general population. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got. And I hope you enjoyed the reading, and I'll see you next time.